This video is going to be looking at cultural variations in attachment. So are there differences in the number of secure, insecure avoidant, insecure resistant infants across the world? So the key study for this particular topic on your specification is the study by Van Izjendoorn and Kroonenberg. And you've got to know the aim, the procedures, the findings of this particular study, because they could ask you questions on any of that in your actual exam. So the aim of the study was to investigate cultural variations in attachment using a meta-analysis of studies. So a meta-analysis, if you remember, is where you get loads of different studies. You don't conduct an experiment, you just get the results of loads of studies and analyse those. So how did they do this? They got 32 different studies using the strange situation and examined the results of those. And the research was from 8 different cultures. And the percentages of the children with the different types of attachment were compared across the different countries. And the findings is the important part. So they found that the most common in all cultures was secure attachment. And that varied from Britain, which had 75%, the highest amount of secure attached, to China having 50%. But in all cultures, it was the most common was secure attachment. The least common in all the cultures was insecure resistant. So only 3% in Britain, but 30% in Israel. But again, in all cultures, it was the least common. Insecure avoidant was most common in Germany and the least common in Japan. We're going to have a little look at why it's the most common in Germany a little bit later. But one of the main findings of Van Izjendoorn's study was this idea that he compared between the different cultures, but he found that there was actually more variation within cultures. So in cultures there was more variation within a culture. So for example, in America, one study showed 46% securely attached children, another study showed 90% securely attached. And what they found was that there was 1.5 times more variation within a culture than between cultures. So that might be, for example, if we look at Britain, when we compare Britain to Japan, there is going to be some difference. However, they found that there was more difference within a culture. So it might be looking at subcultures like middle class, lower class, upper class. That there's more variations within Britain within those 3 classes than there is between different countries. So this is just a graphical representation of Van Izjendoorn's results that we have on the last page. And you might just want to know, again, you need to know all those facts that I had on the last slide. So the fact that secure was the most in all countries, that insecure resistant was the least common in all countries, although it was most common in China. You need to know that Germany has the most insecure avoidant children. So knowing the results that I had on the last slide are really, really important for your exam. So now we're going to have a look at some of the evaluation, the AO3 points for Van Izjendoorn's study. And a major strength of his study was that there is a very large sample size. With 2,000 babies and their primary attachment figures were a result or were taken part in this meta-analysis. So that increases the internal validity of the study as it reduces the impact of any anomalous results on the overall findings. However, some of the samples were very, very small. So for example, the China study and the China sample in the study only included 36 different children, meaning that we can't really generalize the findings to all Chinese children. So although it's got a very large sample size, some of the samples for certain countries were very, very small. Also with Van Izjendoorn's study, there are similarities may not be innately determined. So the similarities between countries, like secure attachment being the most common, might not be as a result of innate drives in children. So when you first look at the findings, they do support Bowlby's theory. They say that the attachment is completely innate, that secure is the most common, so it must be something biological because everyone in the world is most likely to be secure. However, it could also be explained by the effects of mass media. And Van Izjendoorn stated that because we've got similar TV programs, similar parenting books across the globe, all focusing on how to bring up your child, then that might be the reason for the cultural similarities. It might not be anything to do with, as Bowlby said, this innate drive for a child to attach. It could potentially be explained by the effects of mass media being very similar across the world. Therefore, we bring our children up in similar ways. Therefore, you see securely attached as the most common form of attachment. So we've looked at the Izjendoorn study, the key study you need to know for your exam. And that shows that there are cultural similarities. However, we're going to have a look now at a few studies that show why there are cultural differences in attachment across the world. The first one we're going to look at is Grossmann and Grossmann. And as you can see from the bottom, it's a study looking at Germany. So if you remember back to the Izjendoorn study, we found that German children have the highest amount of insecure avoidant attachments. So Grossmann and Grossmann wanted to identify why was this actually the case. And what they found was it was all down to the child-rearing practices of German parents. And parents promoted interpersonal distance between infants and parents. So they wanted there to be a bit of distance, they wanted children to be independent. And that's what they saw as a secure attachment. If the children were away from the parent and quite happy to play, that was in Germany seen as a secure attachment. And infants don't necessarily engage in proximity-seeking behaviour in Germany. They won't go up to the parent and hug them too often. And that is why they appear as insecure avoidant in the strange situation. Due to cultural differences, securely attached children, which they are in Germany, I'm sure there must be some, so these securely attached children would be incorrectly interpreted as insecure because of issues with the strange situation. So the strange situation might only apply to maybe America where it was done, where we see proximity seeking, going to the parent as a secure attachment. Whereas in other cultures, that's not what a secure attachment is. German parents see secure attachment as something completely different. Having interpersonal distance between them and their child is what Germans see as a secure attachment. But when we put them into the secure or into the strange situation, they're shown to be insecure avoidant because of the way they've been brought up. Takahashi's study, which we've already looked at previously in other lessons, focused on Japan. And he had 60 middle-class Japanese infants and their mothers. And he found similar results for secure attachment as Ainsworth did. However, no insecure avoidant children were found, and a very high amount of insecure resistant children were found. And Takahashi had to come up with a reason for maybe why this was the case. No insecure avoidant, high number of insecure resistant children. And what he found was that Japanese children were very, very distressed when they were left alone. 90% of the experiments actually had to be stopped because the child was so severely distressed. And what Takahashi said was that this was a result of Japanese infants rarely experiencing separation during their infancy. So the mother and child are always together. So as soon as you put them into the strange situation, this is a very unnatural environment for the child. They're not used to being away from their mother. So straight away they're very, very distressed, and they appear to be insecure resistant because of this high level of extreme distress when the mother leaves. When in fact, according to Japanese culture, they would be seen as a secure child. The last point we're going to talk about then in this lesson is using cross-cultural studies based in one culture, like America, across the world. And there's a lot of issues that can get brought up there. As you've seen with Grossmann's study and Takahashi's, there's issues of using methodology created in one culture around the rest of the world. And this is called imposed ethics. So the strange situation was created in the West. It's created in America by Mary Ainsworth. And it assumes that, for example, a willingness to explore is a sign of secure attachment, because that's what we in America and in the UK see as a secure child. However, that is not always the case. In Japan, dependence on the mother is seen as a secure attachment. The child being dependent fully and going to the mother and being with the mother all the time is what they see as a secure attachment. So what we're doing basically is we're using a technique designed in one culture and imposing it on another culture. And it won't necessarily have the same meaning. We might not be measuring secure attachment at all. So what we're measuring in one culture, such as in the West, might not actually mean the same thing in other cultures at all. And as Rothbaum famously said, okay, attachment is rooted in American culture and therefore is not relevant to other cultures. So you can see, this is this key term, imposed ethics, and we'll be using it in other cross-cultural lessons as well, that you can't use a method designed in one culture and apply it to another culture. It might not mean the same thing whatsoever, and therefore you might not be measuring what you're intending to measure at all.